Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young, licensed clinical social worker. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. This is bonus episode 41, and both of my kids came home from college this past weekend. Well, by the time you hear this, it's going to be a few weekends. But something happened to my son Josh while he was at school, and my husband had relayed the story to me, but I hadn't heard the story from Josh, and it was something that was pretty significant. This is his second semester at college. He's on academic probation, and he was taking his midterm exam, and the professor took the exam away from him in the middle of the test and asked him to leave. That's all I'm going to tell you. But what I love is he talks about how his thinking started to spiral and how he just kind of went to a really dark place. And I think that happens to a lot of us. Something happens and all of a sudden, as I say in the episode, like for a woman, we're a homeless bag lady. And what I loved is how he turned it around. As I was listening to the story and editing it, I realized I've made a conscious choice as a mom that when Josh tells me stuff, it would be really easy as a mom to step in and say, well, you should have, and to give him advice. He's 18 now, and I'm really stepping back and allowing him to have his own experiences, and I'm not doing that correction that I feel like I probably would have done when he was younger. If it's something that's important, I obviously step in and say something. But as I was editing it, I became aware of that tendency of what I would have wanted to say, and I'm really making a choice to let him have his own experiences. Josh mentions his girlfriend, so I just want to give a shout out to Maddie, who's been an amazing support for Josh, and we just love you, sweet girl. Towards the end, we're talking about some consequences that he's had since he started driving, and he mentions Google Maps, and in high school, he had an internship that was a good 30 minutes away, and he was following Google Maps to get there. And Google Maps told him to make a U-turn, and he did, and a police officer pulled him over, and he got a moving violation for following Google Maps. So that was one of the things that he alludes to. If you're interested in the podcast, I post regularly on Instagram. I post pictures of a lot of the things that we talk about. You can follow me at Unapologetically Sensitive. And now, on to the episode. Hey, Joshy, welcome home.
Hello.
Here we are again.
Yeah, here we are.
You just woke up from a nap. We woke you up. You need to head back to school, and I'm begging you to please just tell me one story that happened that I heard from Dad, but I really haven't heard from you. So I know something happened in one of your college classes. Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
It was chemistry, and this is the day of the big exam. It's our first exam, so this really starts off our grade. So I go to take the exam, but the night before, it's chemistry, by the way, I print out a periodic table, but this one's in color, just because it's easier to look at. So anyway, we're taking the exam, and he says, oh yeah, everything's off your desk. I keep my periodic table because, it's the same as the one he gives us, only mine's in color. Nothing else is different. So I'm taking my exam, everything is going really well. And he comes up to me and takes my exam without even saying anything and goes, good day. And I go, what? I go, what's going on? And he goes, you heard me, everything off your desk, and starts walking away.
So what was going on in your mind as you're starting to pack up your stuff?
First I was angry. I'm like, what? This guy's screwing me out of a good grade? Because, I'm already on academic probation already.
Right.
I'm starting to spiral downhill. I'm thinking, okay, this is a bad grade in this class, and this is going to drag me down, and I'm going to fail out of college, and I'm going to get a bad job and shit life. And it's just going downhill for me. And then I pack my stuff, I compose myself, and I walked up to him, and I shake his hand and go, I'm sorry. Without saying anything, he goes, thank you, and he hands me my test back. Mm-hmm. And as I'm walking away, he goes, oh, nobody's ever done that before. Because, I'm sure he's caught people trying to, quote-unquote, cheat before. Mm-hmm. But he says nobody's ever came up and man-to-man said, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention. So he gives me the test back after I said sorry and shake his hand, and I finished the test.
What made you thank him? I mean, because you were angry and spiraling. I think we've all experienced that. One thing happens, and the next thing you know, for a woman, you're a homeless bag lady. I don't know. What's the equivalent if you're a guy?
I think it's just that mainly because Dad, he taught me, the best thing you can do is just be a stand-up guy.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but I just rationalized it. I said, okay, even if I fail this test, I'm not going to fail this class necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be hard to, but I still have to go to this class, and I still have to look him in the eye every time he's teaching. And I don't want to be that one guy that, oh, he's the guy that tried to cheat. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to at least clear my name up. Not only that, but just kind of getting my 2 cents, saying, okay, like, I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention. And just kind of straighten my name out. Just try to be a stand-up guy.
So how was that when he handed you your test back? What was going on inside of you?
Well, I wasn't expecting it because I started walking away, go to my next class, you know, because I've already accepted the fact that I'm going to fail this class. That was already, you know, that door had already closed for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. I'm like, what? Like, is he being serious? Is he messing with me? I go, wait, really? And he's like, yes, thank you, sir. I kind of thought of Coach Carter when he calls his basketball players, sir.
No, but I'm going to pretend like I do. Yeah,
anyway,
I totally know what you're talking about.
I don't know. That's just kind of what came through my mind. Yeah, I was happy because, like I said, I already accepted the fact that I'm going to fail this test and probably fail this class. So it was like a second chance for me.
Mm-hmm. And then when you turned your paper back into him at the end, did you guys have any exchange?
I just mouthed, I'm sorry, and he goes, I know. So I think at that point, he kind of knew. I gave him my periodic table as I was walking away, you know, just kind of like, not in a passive-aggressive way, just saying like, oh, you know, just like confirming there wasn't anything on here. Mm-hmm. So I guess he looked at it, and he goes, oh, I know, afterwards, in kind of like all is forgiven type way.
So when you turned in the test, you gave him the color copy of the periodic chart so that he saw that you really weren't cheating, that all it was a color copy.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway from this? This is a pretty significant event that happened in your life, and you really had an opportunity. I love how, because I think it's common for all of us. Something happens and we just spiral, you know, I call it circling the drain. And you really were able to pull yourself out of there and show up and apologize and tell him thank you. And it had a huge impact. So what are your thoughts about this afterwards, and how do you feel about how you handled it?
I'm pretty happy with how I handled it. I mean, not many people can say they, I guess, quote unquote, failed an exam and then retook the exam. Mm-hmm. It's one way to word it. I don't think very many people can say that. I think it's just partly because Dad mainly has just taught me, okay, like, if you're ever wrong, you have to admit it. Mm-hmm. And just one of the worst things you can do is not be a stand-up guy. Mm-hmm. So I think that combination, realizing that, okay, if I'm angry, nothing's going to get done. That's just going to dig me in a deeper hole. As well as the fact that I'm still going to have to look this man in the eye every time I learn now, and that's just not what I want.
Mm-hmm. And what I love about this story is I think there's so much power in, you know, what Dad taught you is to be a stand-up guy, that when we make a mistake, to own our mistake. And that really made an impression on him. Didn't he say that you're the only person that has ever done that? Did he tell you how long he's been teaching?
Yeah, he told me he's the only person. He hasn't told me how long he's been teaching, but he's probably in his 50s. And he has his doctorate too, so that means that, you know, teaching that's a big portion of his life. I'm assuming he's probably been teaching for about 20 years. Mm-hmm. And that's not to mention for each year he probably teaches 3 or 4 classes. Right. And each class is probably 200 students. So. Right.
Well, and the other thing is that you had the ability to, even though you started to circle the drain, that there was something in you that was able to pull yourself out of it, to kind of get back in your adult and to thank him, to apologize. And I just think that it's so powerful. I mean, I don't think that the moral of the story is say you're sorry so you get what you want. The moral of the story is when you're willing to look at your own behavior and to apologize and own it, often that opens the door for all kinds of transformative things to happen. I just think this is such a beautiful story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I said before, not only that, but just because I already accepted the fact I didn't apologize in order to retake the exam. That wasn't my goal. I was, you know, just kind of clearing up my name and just try to straighten things out. My goal was just to make sure he knew my side of the story and just make sure that I wasn't doing anything bad. Having realistic expectations kind of helped ground me too.
Well, to me, your intention was not to be able to take the test back. It was to say, I'm a person of integrity. And I mean, did you know at that point that it was because your periodic table was in color that's why he had taken your test away?
Yeah, because he pointed to the periodic table and said no.
Mm-hmm. So he was walking around while you were taking the test?
Yeah, he walks up and down the rows in between people, just looking, make sure everything's fine. Mm-hmm. And I guess he saw the periodic table and didn't like it. But I mean, you can't really blame him because he said, you know, nothing on the desk. Mm-hmm. So I think it was just not only miscommunication, but just lack of understanding how he said it on my part. So this all could have been avoided.
How?
Because he said nothing on the desk, but it wasn't like nothing on the desk. You know what I mean? He seemed very relaxed, almost. And if he said it very sternly, like, oh, nothing on the desk or you're going to fail my class, I probably wouldn't have. Not that it was a big risk to bring the periodic table in the first place, but just because I figured that there wasn't anything different in terms of material on the periodic table, except for the fact that this is blue and that's gray.
So I just want to clarify, because this is the first time I've heard the story from you. In the class, there's a big periodic table that everybody can see.
Well, on the test, he gives us an exam, and it's just a packet of pages, and on the front page is a black and white periodic table.
Okay. You just had printed out an additional one in color because it was easier to read.
It's easy to look at. It has all the non-metals in a certain color. It has all the transition metals in a certain color. But, it's just like looking at different shades of gray instead of like yellow or blue. It's just easier to look at for me.
Okay. How did you feel about yourself after this?
I made me feel really good. That's not really giving you much, but kind of confirming what you already said. It's kind of like I'm the piece of toast that always lands face up no matter what happens.
The buttered side bread, and the butter seems to always land face up with you.
And I told that I texted my girlfriend immediately. I'm like, oh, you won't believe what just happened. And I told her the story. And she wasn't angry, but she's like, really? Can't one thing bad ever happen to you? So that was kind of funny. This definitely could have and probably should have turned out really bad. But it's like you always say, like, it always seems like I seem to wriggle my way out of these tough situations every time. And it's not like I ever rely on that to happen. It's not like I ever welcome those. It's just kind of about staying optimistic. I feel like that always helps, because if I came in with a frown on my face when I apologize, saying, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that he wouldn't have given it back, but that wouldn't have helped the situation.
Yeah. Well, I see these as being two separate things. That, yes, you're a kid who loves to bend the rules as far as you can, and my thing is, as long as you don't break them, it's okay. And I grew up with a very anxious mother, and...
Me too.
I want to play whose mother was more anxious. I owned my stuff with you, though.
Yeah, you do.
But the message that I got was, if you don't follow the rules, something terrible will happen. And what I learned from you is, you didn't follow the rules a lot of the time. You'd forget things, you'd lose things, and you always came out fine. And there was a part of me that felt angry. I kept waiting for a natural consequence to happen so that you would learn that you've got to follow through on these things. It very rarely happened. And you and I had a conversation that part of me felt very frustrated, because you were supposed to break the rule and something bad was supposed to happen, and it didn't. But it taught me that it's really not about the rules. And you seem to have this ability that no matter what happens, although that's not true, since you've started driving, you've had some consequences.
Yeah. However, that's another story, but those weren't really my fault.
Well, you had financial consequences attached to whether it was your fault or not.
That's true. And
it was your responsibility to handle them because you were the one that was driving the car. So
all I'm saying is that Apple Maps doesn't follow the rules of the road.
But for the most part, you tend to do things the way that you want to do it, and things really turn out in your favor. In this situation, though, I really think that it had to do with you having integrity as a man and owning your mistake, being humble with the professor for the sake of just wanting to have integrity and be able to look him in the eye again. That opened a door for something amazing to happen. And I don't think that's about luck. I think that's about how you showed up as a man in his class.
Yeah, definitely. And this definitely showed me that I keep using this quote, be a stand-up guy, and that's just because that's what Dad's taught me, just own up to your mistakes. And I think this is the first example that it really showed what can come out of it.
Right.
Yeah, because I could be a stand-up guy and not tip somebody and they're okay with it. You know what I mean? Just like little stuff like that. But this is like the first big instance where, like I said, you being a stand-up guy really paid off. And I'm definitely going to, not that I wouldn't do it before, but this is kind of just solidified what you guys raised me to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that the benefit of behaving in integrity is that when we walk away, we feel good with who we are. And it's about letting go of whatever the outcome is. And in this case, you had an excellent outcome. Even if you would have said, thank you, shook his hand, and you walked out and didn't take the test, you would have felt good about yourself. And that's really what all this is about, that oftentimes when we act in integrity, we own when we make a mistake, we treat people respectfully, it allows other wonderful things to happen. It doesn't always happen, but still we walk away feeling good about how we handled it. And that's really what it's about. But this just has such a beautiful ending, and I'm a proud mama. Is there anything else that you want to say about this situation or any thoughts that you had about it or any advice you would give to other college students?
Not that I'm a star pupil college student, but I guess just be a stand-up person can never hurt anybody.
Yeah.
Not just one piece of advice.
Yeah.
I guess the dad taught me, and then I would definitely relay on to anybody that would ever ask or listen to me.
Yeah. It's been bumpy for you. This is your second semester at college. The first semester you really had a steep learning curve. You're on academic probation, which I share it because it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And you're doing everything that you can now to show up and be the kind of student that you want to be. And then you had this bump and you navigated it beautifully.
Thank you.
All right. I know you want to leave and drive back to school. It was great having you home this weekend. I love you, my Joshy Washy Woo.
Thanks. I love you too.
All right. Have a good day. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the episode. Obviously, I'm a very proud mama. I do provide online telehealth to folks in California. We can jump online and do a 20-minute consultation for free. You can see what you think. If you're interested, you can go to my website, patriciayounglcsw.com. We have an amazing Facebook group called Unapologetically Sensitive, where we're building an amazing community. If you have any questions, comments, I love hearing from you. If you have any topics that you'd love to see me address or any questions you'd like me to answer on the podcast, you can reach me at unapologeticallysensitive@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you find this podcast helpful, please share it. Share it with as many people as you think would benefit. It really helps to grow the podcast. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.